Okay, so today we're going deep on a case that's
Yeah,
pretty unsettling, I think, for a lot of people.
I think so.
And it's the case of Return to Nature Funeral Home.
Right.
Jon and Carie Hallford, the owners,
Yes.
um, accused of some pretty awful things.
Really awful.
Corpse abuse,
Yeah.
financial fraud.
Yeah, I mean, this case really kind of rocked the industry, I think.
Yeah, and it makes you think about
Absolutely.
what happens, when we die, right?
Yeah.
Like we trust these funeral homes to
Pay our loved ones, yeah.
exactly to take care of our loved ones and handle everything with dignity and respect.
It's a huge amount of trust.
It is a huge amount of trust and
vulnerability.
vulnerability, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when something like this happens, it really kind of,
Shakes the foundations.
shakes the foundations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's sort of remind everyone of the basic details here.
Yeah.
We're talking about 190 decaying bodies discovered back in 2023. Families were given concrete instead of ashes.
Ugh, that's just terrible.
It's just
horrible.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And then on top of all of that, nearly $900,000
Wow.
in pandemic relief funds that were supposed to be used to help businesses stay afloat.
Right, to help them survive, pay their employees, keep the lights on.
Exactly. And these funds were allegedly misused by the Hallfords.
Look, how could they?
We're talking holidays, cosmetic surgery,
Yeah.
cryptocurrency investments.
It's unbelievable.
It's really something else. So,
Yeah.
I mean, can you help us understand this a little bit better? Like, what were these relief funds actually intended for?
Well, yeah, as I was saying, they were meant to keep these businesses going during a really, really tough time.
Yeah,
Pandemic, I mean, so many businesses were struggling.
absolutely.
They were having to lay off employees. They were having to close their doors.
Right.
And so the government stepped in and said, okay, we're going to provide this financial lifeline
Right.
to help you get through this and to keep your employees paid and to keep your doors open.
So these were essential funds.
Absolutely essential.
Wow. And to think that they allegedly used that money for personal gain.
It just adds like a whole other layer of awfulness to this whole thing.
Right. It's like a betrayal of trust on multiple levels.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about those 190 bodies for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, that number is just staggering.
It is. Yeah.
Can you give us kind of a visual for that? Like, how much space are we talking about?
So imagine like a massive airplane hangar
Okay.
filled to the brim
Wow.
with bodies in various stages of decomposition.
Oh my gosh.
It's just horrific. And it's not just about improper storage.
Right.
It's a public health hazard.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the legal definition of corpse abuse,
Yes.
right? Because this wasn't just improper storage. This goes way beyond that.
Way beyond.
So what does corpse abuse mean legally?
So legally speaking, corpse abuse typically involves actions or inactions
Sure.
that lead to the decomposition or desecration of a body. And also things that could create potential health risks.
So it sounds like in this case, both of those things were happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, 190 decaying bodies in an airplane hangar sized
Yeah.
space. I mean, that's textbook corpse abuse.
Right. And it makes you wonder, was this same disregard for human life, the same kind of callousness,
Right.
was that also a factor in the decision to allegedly give families concrete instead of ashes?
It's a tough question, but you have to wonder, was it purely for profit? Was it just easier and cheaper to dispose of the bodies improperly?
Right.
These questions are really disturbing.
They are.
And they point to a very, very disturbing mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the regulatory landscape in Colorado at the time.
Okay.
It seems like there were some pretty serious gaps in oversight.
Yeah, there were definitely some loopholes.
So was Colorado unique in that regard, or were these kinds of loopholes common in other states as well?
Colorado wasn't alone. There were other states that also had less stringent regulations,
Okay.
but the Hallford case really highlighted how these gaps could be exploited.
Right, like it brought it to the forefront.
Exactly. It showed just how bad things could get.
So thankfully, it seems like things have changed since then.
They have.
There was a major overhaul of regulations in 2024.
Yes.
And from what I understand, the funeral home industry itself was largely supportive of these stricter regulations.
They were.
What do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because they recognize that clear, enforceable regulations actually protect the integrity of the entire industry.
That's interesting.
Yeah, stronger regulations help to weed out the bad actors.
Right.
And they build public trust.
Right.
And ultimately, they ensure that everyone is operating ethically.
So it's kind of like a self-preservation thing?
In a way, yes.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. What exactly changed with these new regulations?
So some of the key changes included stricter licensing requirements,
Okay.
more frequent inspections, and clearer guidelines on handling remains and cremations.
So basically, more transparency, more accountability.
Exactly.
And what kind of impact are we seeing as a result of these changes?
Well, for one thing, it's much harder for a situation like this to happen again.
That's good.
Yeah, these changes are already having a positive impact.
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here.
we have.
We've seen a truly horrifying crime.
Yes.
We've explored the potential motivations behind it.
Right.
And we've seen a positive step towards preventing something like this from ever happening again.
Exact.
But, it does make you wonder if the industry as a whole supported these changes.
Yeah.
Why weren't they in place sooner?
Right.
Like, what does this tell us about self-regulation in other industries where ethics are so critical?
That's a really good question.
It's something to think about for sure.
It is.
Because, we often assume that these industries are tightly regulated.
We do.
But this case shows that there's always room for improvement. And there's always a need for vigilance.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Okay.
But this is a case that I think will stay with all of us.
I think so.
And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for positive change.
There is.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.